Hello, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joda, and I just want to extend a very heartfelt thank you from the bottom of my heart for making our inaugural meeting of the Stowe Film Society to date a smashing success. It's just awesome to see people. Woo! Absolutely. This is our official launch pad here. We're trying to, with the society, unite professionals from the TV and film industries behind a benevolent cause. Uniting people from the business community, the art community, behind what the Film Commission has been espousing for many years, and that is to rebrand Vermont filmmaking as a media mecca, where we have this brain drain. It seems like once people graduate, they just automatically emigrate to a bigger city for more opportunity. We have the talent pool here. Why not organize so that we have an in-house production company? Where we have development and production and even distribution under one roof, under one umbrella. So it is possible, and that's why we're here, united, forging ahead for a synergy, if you will, of cross-pollination. We have the talent, we've got the intellect, so let's get things happening. So I applaud you all for coming out tonight. I thank you very much. And
we should applaud you.
Thanks very much. But that being said, it's not the Joda Dog and Pony show at all. I just have to extend a very heartfelt thank you to our VIP guest speaker tonight, Mr. Hawk Ostby, for coming out tonight. Very special guest. Thank Tim Cavanaugh for being a linchpin, making this happen tonight very much. My producer, Ricky G, over there. Joe Buckshin over there from the Vermont State Film Commission as well. Thank you very much. What is the Stowe Film Society? I think I wrapped that up. Pretty much it's just a synergy of business people and art people trying to forge ahead and get the face-to-face contact, because in Vermont it's really hard sometimes. We're all in our little ivory towers, and it's good to get out and get some fresh air and share it with people over some good food and conversation. So briefly, I'll give my bio and then I'll open it up to our Master of Ceremonies tonight, Mr. Tim Cavanaugh. He will introduce Hawk himself. I'm a producer, screenwriter, living off the grid right now in a little log cabin in Sutton, Vermont, with no running water, which is awesome. Thank you very much. I'm kind of reliving the commune days. I was born on a commune, the Bean Commune down there in Bean Hollow, bathing in the stream, crayfish eating our feet. And actually, I was brought home in a sled towed behind a snow machine down to our $50 a month hunting camp with no running water and no electric. So that's where I find myself now. And I actually organized tonight's events on my iPhone because I don't even have internet. And that's the beauty part about Vermont. You just have that innovative frontiersmanship and you just keep going. You persevere and you're going to succeed in the end. And that's what I would hope Hawk would touch upon, how he rose from where he was to where he is now. So in conclusion, I've written a new book I'm really excited about entitled Sex and Death. Great smash hit, I'm sure, shopping that around. And a backdoor pilot, Departed Harvest, that we're very thrilled about, in tandem with Tim's help and Ricky's help as well. So that, without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to Mr. Tim Cavanaugh.
Thank you, Joda, and again, thank you for setting this up. I think it's great that someone set the ball in motion and get the wheels turning so that we can collaborate and get people together. And it's nice looking about the room and seeing so many familiar faces and having worked on projects with many of the folks that are in the room. And it's an exciting time in Vermont because there is so much creativity here, and people are very passionate about filmmaking and wanting to try and do that much more. So I think it's exciting to have someone like Hawk who lives in this state, having moved from their big palatial apartment in New York in 2003, which is when they came to Vermont in 2003. Monica, who you've all met, she Inloos, do you? She will tell you all about Inloo if you have not heard. By show of hands, who has heard about Inloo through Monica? Or through, yes? All right, she will teach you all about that. Yeah, she'll make the rounds. Did you bring enough business cards?
I brought a few.
Yeah, okay, of course you did. But they came up in 2003 with their then 2 kids. They've had another one since then. And Hawk's got quite a wonderful past with his writing, and that's what we asked him to talk about tonight, because he started out somewhere, pushing the pencil, pushing the lead across, and And it's a really interesting story to hear from him because he's gone on and written some amazing features, as I'm sure you're very familiar with. Iron Man, yeah. Academy Award nominated for Children of Men, and then this July, Cowboys and Aliens with Harrison Ford and Daniel Craig, which will be coming out. Before all that, doing Independence, and one that he did was with First Snow, and that's what we asked him to speak about tonight, because we wanted to find out from a production level, the very startup of it, getting that production team together and building it, and how you get someone like a J.K. Simmons on board and Guy Pearce on board and build that budget and then make the film. What the hell's so funny over there? What the hell? Anyways. All right, and with that, let's bring him up here. Hawk Ostby, everybody.
Do I sit? Do I stand? What do I? All right, I'll sit. I'll sit. Well, first of all, it's really amazing to actually come out of your little writing den and be among real people rather than imaginary ones. So thanks for that, and I'm very honored to be here. But I think it's really great. I mean, you know, to be among people who share your passion is such an enormous thing. I mean, in LA, it's taken for granted. You walk out your door, you throw a dart, you're going to hit somebody who's working on a screenplay, who's written a screenplay, who's planning on writing one, who's, you know, everybody there is kind of in it, and it's a little, you know, you get so caught up in the noise and the business of it that it's very easy to forget, you know, the storytelling part of it, and that's what it really begins with. I mean, you may have big stars that sign on to things or who want to do things, but nothing moves until there's a script. I mean, it's nothing, and you have to create it. You have to create it out of nothing often, or if you're adapting, you're creating it out of something. But it's, you know, for anything you want to do in that business, to have a story sense, to understand what it is, to tell a story, and you know, the forces at work there, it's essential. I mean, directing, acting, you know, it's absolutely essential. You know, I'll take it back to how I got into all this, and you know, as strange, you know, I mean, I used to imagine starting out, like, it seems so bizarre, like, how do they do it out there, like these movies, how do they get produced, how do they, and then you realize it's the same thing you're doing at home or when you're making a student film. It's really the same damn thing. It's a story, and there's a camera, and there's actors, and it happens sort of the same way. It's just on a bigger scale. But I never came from like a pedigree. You know, my dad wasn't the amazing poet of Norway, you know, yodeling up in the mountains and writing great poetry. We have no pedigree of writing in our family. What we do have is my mom had a great love of books. And we used to have a ton of books around the house. We used to have bookshelves everywhere. And the smell of those books, you know, I grew up around them. And the covers, I used to look at the covers. They were so intriguing. And I started reading early, and I just, you know, in the winter in Norway where I grew up, like, you know, to pick up a book and you know, to read Alistair MacLean and get transported to Indonesia in the middle of, you know, it was so, it was just amazing, and I loved reading, and I just, you know, I would go through books, like they were like my little drug, and I think, I mean, that certainly is what made it for me later. I mean, I just loved storytelling, the transportation of being immersed in a story and all that stuff. And so I sort of started off with this idea that I was going to be a novelist, and I was going to write novels, and it was that's how it, you know, was going to happen for me. And I started writing a few, and it was really hard. It was impossible. I mean, a novel is you know, you start writing, and then you get a few pages in, and you go, oh my God, I'm like chipping away at this, you know, at the Everest here. I'm never going to get up. This is impossible. I can't do it. And so I kept trying, and it was really tough. And you know, I would just get caught up in the minutia. It just seemed so mind-boggling, the whole thing. Like, you had this character, and you were trying to say all these things at once, and it was just confusing. And I would always stop. I would get a few pages in, and it just, you know, it just never sort of took hold. I just couldn't do it. And then years later, I went to BU, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was in a very... I did. Uh-oh. No, that's wonderful. That's where I met Monica. Best thing of the... It's amazing. Great school. It wasn't. Oh, it was? Oh, Kenmore. The Rat's Killer? That was must have. Oh, yeah, all right. That's gone now. It's very gilded. It's like 42nd Street. It's gone. Now you can lick the sidewalk. But where was I? Right. When I got there, I took a film course, and I just realized, like, of all the other courses I was taking, like, film just stuck with me. There was something about it. Like, when I heard something, it just, I remembered it. It wasn't like economics, where I'd have to go back and literally read the book 10 times and try to cram this information into my head and make it stick, and then, so I could regurgitate it and then immediately forget it. Film was something, I heard it once, and it was just there. And it was, it was just intriguing. I just realized, hey, that's, without really knowing it, that's something I really love doing. And at the same time, there was a kid in our dorm who, came from California, and he was didn't like doing homework or writing papers, so I would always write his papers for him. And they were wildly interesting because his father was a very high-powered exec at some studio or another. But he had these amazing stories just of the business and the people who stayed at their house, and I just became fascinated. I was sort of getting the business, the things you couldn't read in books from him about the industry, and it sounded crazy and wild and fascinating, and at the same time, oh, would you like to give me a, please.
Take your glass.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm
No,
sorry.
not at all. This is great. So I was sort of getting it, but I was really starting to get enamored with this film thing, and I would go to the library, which I would never do for economics or math, or like go look up, hey, well, how do they do this or how do they do that? And so I just knew, look, I've got this, there's something here, and obviously, you're wondering if you're ever going to eat. It's such a, what am I, film? I mean, what do I know about that? Nothing, but I just went with that little thread, and then I realized that somebody had to write these movies, and there was a guy that I knew that he was just furiously writing. He was just like his printer was always like tickets, pages spewing out, and he had rejection letters from like official letterhead from Lucasfilm, and I was just blown away. I was like, wow, this guy's like submitted things to these. He was like a god. He had rejection letters from like Lucasfilm, all these places, and you're less like, that's the letterhead from Lucasfilm. So I bought Sid Field's book, and I went home and I was like, I'm gonna write a script. That's what I'm gonna do. And I had this idea, and it actually was sort of similar to City Slickers, strangely enough, by the time I was done. And that was just as City Slickers was getting released, but it was just an attempt. What I wanted to do was to start and just get to the finish, to say I finished something, which I never could do without novel writing. I'd get halfway in, and it was just too complex. I just, the research of it was so hard. I mean, I don't know. It was like getting halfway up Everest and realizing you have none of the skills, none of the gear to get there. But with screenwriting, it was a very different sort of thing. I mean, it felt like it could be done. It was 120 pages, not 250, 300, 400 of detailed sort of. But my goal was just to finish, to start, and then get to the end and say, hey, I've written a script. And of course, it was a terrible script, and everybody has 5 or 6 or 7 very bad scripts in them, which you have to write out and essentially just vomit out, and then you start realizing that okay. I know something is wrong. Let me address that. What is wrong? Why can't I? Why does this seem weird? Or why can't I get this act to sort of line up? And this moment seems weird, and I'm telling the audience too much. And you start getting savvy about these things. The more and more you do, it's like a muscle. I tell the kids with their writing. I mean, it's the more you do, the more proficient you get at it. You just start realizing the things not to write rather than the things to write. And I do have to say, I believe more than ever, it is about the things you don't write, the things you leave off screen, than the things you actually write about. It's the white space. And that's where the story lives. I mean, any audience that watches a movie is watching a movie that's off screen and the movie that's on screen. And it's that off screen movie, the more you can play to that, which is in the imagination of the audience, that's the tricky part. And you can get to that. It isn't something, I will say, just to, to go back a little bit, but my mom did try writing at one point. She loved stories, and she really did try her hand at writing, but she got 1 rejection letter and quit. She was like, and she was absolutely convinced to the day she died that you were born with this talent, and if you don't have it, like if you can't, there's only a certain number of people, Mario Puzo, these guys, they write that story and it's perfect, and it's it's innate, it's in your genes, and if it isn't, you'll never be a writer. And I knew, just from my experiences doing other things, that if I was passionate about something and I did it, I could get good at it. And that was the sole thing that kept me going with these screenplays, was saying, look, I don't believe in that. I believe that if I'm obsessed with this thing, and if I continue and just beat my head against the wall, I'm going to get somewhere with this. And that is the only reason I'm sitting here right now. It is perseverance, and that is the only word. And you need to tattoo that, on the inside of your eyelids, because it's all about perseverance. Most people, when they say, hey, I want to be a director, I want to be a writer, or they get 2.5 years in and they quit, and it takes 3 to 5 years of solid effort. But if you, and somebody told me this, I was very fortunate, we've met really, really great people coming up who gave us little pieces of advice, whatever, to sustain us in the tough times. And I remember somebody telling me, look, if you stick with this for 3 to 5 years and you're serious about it, you will be doing what you love doing. And he was absolutely right. I met Mark at Boston University. Well, actually, no, I didn't meet him there. We were both there, but we sort of roamed the same hallways, but never met. And some years later, I took a job at Showtime Networks, and he was working there as well. He was in the accounting department. I was, a heartbeat away from the mailroom, and a friend said, hey, there's this other dude who's trying to starve himself to death, and you guys should meet, and both starve. And we met, and we started reading each other's material, and I realized that he had he had analytical skills that were unbelievable. And I'm not an analytical person. I'm from the gut. I can't tell you what's wrong. I got to drag it home and sort of, chew on it and figure it out. But we just started realizing that we have very different skill sets, but our sensibilities were very much the same. We love the same type of movies, the same stories, the same kind of things. I mean, he's Irish. I'm Norwegian. I don't know. Maybe there's something in the damp, cold, something laid down in our DNA. But we just realized, we should try and do something together, and we did. And right away, it's you could tell there was something there. Wherever I was sort of falling down, he would pick it up, and wherever he was running into a corner, I would be able to take it over that hurdle, and it's that's the way it's been. And we have a very weird style of working in that we don't work in the same room. We don't sit there shooting lines back and forth. Or we did a little bit on Iron Man. It was very counterproductive because we would just step on each other's thoughts, and it wasn't efficient. We're two separate brains, and we just have a weird way of working, and separate sort of process, and for some reason it seems to work, and that's what we stuck with. But anyway, maybe I went way too far back with all this BU stuff, but I mean, it really is true. I mean, if you're serious about it, and it has to be more. If it's like work, or if you're doing it to get famous, or to get rich, it's the wrong thing. I mean, you can go down to Wall Street with the time and effort you're going to put into trying to make a film or write a story, and you'll be rich 10 times over before you'll ever, expending the same amount of energy. So you do it because you love it. And at a certain point, I knew I was stuck with it. I mean, I just knew that I was always gravitating towards stories. No matter what was happening in my life, I would always kind of go back to that notebook and that, what if, it'd be kind of cool if this and this and this. And I won't tell you that I was completely, I was never really confident that I was going to actually eat doing this, and so I sort of always had that one foot in the other world, trying to hold on, well, I could be a business guy, and I don't think I could, and looking back, I mean, I did the cubicle thing for a while. I could never do that life. I mean, I would rather do something outdoors, but I think I was just scared that this writing thing wasn't going to work out. I was going to be this guy, bitter and walking up and down the streets of New York, swearing at people and taking, knocking people's hats off, and I didn't want to be that guy. I just take it on my family now. That's right. But I think I remember it was Martin Sheen or somebody giving somebody else a piece of advice, but they said, look, if you're going to be a writer, then be a writer. If you're going to be a director, then be a freaking director. Like get into it and put all your eggs, just focus yourself and do it. Don't be like just, yeah, I'm a director for the sake of saying I'm a director, or, for some sort of status thing, or do it because you love doing it. And if you don't love doing it, you should get out, because it's a pretty steep slope. And if you don't love the journey, it's going to be unimaginable to try and scale the mountain. That said, I mean, there's so many times I reflect back, and I'm just so incredibly grateful. I love doing, you know, I get teary-eyed thinking about it. I love doing what I do. I mean, it's the most amazing job in the world. I mean, excuse me, I'm getting emotional, but it really is. And I'm getting emotional because I'm thinking about my mom and all the, you know, all the things. You know, she wanted me to be an accountant or a banker. You know, she was Indian, and it was all about being an accountant, a lawyer, or a, you know, and she couldn't understand this writing thing, and it was so difficult for her to understand. And but it was great. You know, in the end, she really got to see some of the success, and that was really meant a lot. You know. And then she came around. You know, she was always concerned that we were, you know, hey, are you making a, you know, are they paying you? Are you eating? You know, it's like, yeah, Mom, they pay us. It's okay. Everything is good. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about First No and how we got into that. So Mark and I were, when we started writing, we were always trying to write for the market. We said, what's selling right now? What's hot? That's what we want to write. You know, that's the thing. And we weren't successful. We were writing things that were interesting, and people were saying, "Hey, you know, it's pretty cool. It's awesome, but it's, you know, but it's too much like this or too much like that or not, you know." So finally, we got fed up, and we said, "Why we, you know, we're sitting here waiting for the phone to ring, which is the worst thing in the world. When it's out of your hands and your fate is in somebody else's hands, it's really terrible." And we said, look, we're going to push away from the table. We're going to go and write something that we care about, that we love, and we're going to go out in the desert. You know, we're going to get $150,000 together somehow, you know, from family, friends. You know, we're going to steal some of it. And then we're going to go out in the desert, and we're going to do what our heroes, the Coen brothers, did with Blood Simple. Was, you know, go out in the desert, and they shot Blood Simple. Well, not in the desert, but they sort of did the same thing. And Barry Sonnenfeld was there, you know, their DP, and it was a whole NYU kind of thing, and that was our model. And we said, we're going to make we're going to write this really, really tight script, really amazing, really scaled down. We're going to strip it down, remove all the bullshit. It's just absolute story, all 100% Angus, and we're going to go out there and do this thing. And we sent it out. Well, it's a sort of a long story, but Mark had this neighbor, and their dogs met, and turns out she had a, you know, she was in the film business, and her sister was a manager out in LA, and Mark said, oh, I got the script, and so we gave the script to her. She goes, holy shit, this thing is amazing. Let me send it to my manager, you know, sister-in-law, whatever. And she sent it out, and then she called and said, oh my God, this is such a great, I want to sign you guys. This is wonderful. And we had also turned it into a competition, the Cinestory. And all this stuff happened with like 1 week. We got the Cinestory, we won the Cinestory. This lady said, oh my God, come out to LA. We're going to do 50 meetings. I'm going to make you guys go all over town. And it was really weird. That script that we wrote for ourselves and not for anybody else was the can opener. You know, it just like opened up the impossible. And it was such a lesson because we'd heard it before. People say, hey, write what you know, write what you love, write. And it's all like, yeah, but we're going to write this, or, you know, and you stray into a story. I mean, we were doing stuff about U.S. Marshals, or like, what do we know about U.S. Marshals? Like, I don't even know, like, I barely know the cop. Oh, that's a cop. It's a Glock. It's a, you know, that was the extent of what we knew about that. But it really is about that. You know, nobody thinks that they have a story. Well, not nobody, but I mean, a lot of people think, oh, who would care about my life? That's bullshit. That's nothing. You know what? But those, you know, it's a search inwards rather than it is a search outwards for stories. You know. My sister always says, you know, when you know yourself, you'll know everybody, and it's sort of true, and I think it applies to stories as well. You know, it's looking inside yourself and saying, why do I like what I like? Why does this? You read a story and you go, oh man, that's so moving. Like, why is it moving you? What is it about you that you know? Somebody else will look at it and go, yep, that's a story about somebody falling down a well. You know, but for some reason, it's everything to you. And those are the things you need to explore and you know, find out about yourself and connect with and say, what is it? What is it that I care about? What boils my blood? And those are the stories you should be doing. Because it's too hard without, I mean, to try and emulate it or fake it. And you can do it. I mean, eventually your craft can get so good that you can, I'm not saying our craft is that good, but I'm saying you can be such a craftsperson that you can take on anything and still make it work. but it's not going to have that soul of when you really care about something and you go and do it. So first now, we go and do all these meetings where we're meeting with Ron Howard's people, we're meeting all over town, and it's just unbelievable. We're just like this in these meetings going, wow, yeah, this is Ron Howard's company. You know, all these people you heard about, you admire, and we're total deer in the headlights. And it seems like this thing is going to get, you know, it's going to get done. And at one point, we have at one point, Miramax, our managers, say, hey, this doesn't have to be a small movie. This could be a huge movie with like so-and-so, and I forget who was hot at the time, but this is like 90, was it 99? 99. 99. So they were saying, look, this could be a big, you know, I see this as a Miramax movie, and they sent it to Miramax, and with all this thing like, hey, you got to read it by 5 p.m. and get back to us. You know, they put all this pressure on it, so everybody, you know, feels like it's a hot thing that's you know going, and you got to throw down on it or it's gone. And then throughout the day, we get these phone calls saying, hey, so-and-so has read it. They love it. It's moving to the next level, next level, next level. And we're moving up this organization, and we're like, oh my God. No, it was like, it became this huge thing, and it was like, okay, Harvey is like canceling his meeting to read the script. He's in the room right now. You know, here are the initial figures we're talking. You know, and I'm sitting here changing a diaper, like I got the, you know, and it was like, I'm like, you know, doing this, and the figures they're talking about. You know, you're like, oh my God, we're talking about this is like a career. You know, we're about to get launched, and it was so unbelievable. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm going to be able to tell Mom, you know, like, hey. Guess what? Just sold it, baby. Like we're huge. And then you know you're on pins and needles, and then you start believing. You're like a little bit like yeah, you know it's going to happen. And then the phone rings at 10 p.m. and they go, well, they loved it. And then they got to the end, and the guy dies at the end. Can't do it. And they can't figure out how to make the guy live, which was actually a great testament to the script because it was written so tight that they actually couldn't sort of bring the guy back and still have the movie hold up. And it all fell through. And that was it. We hung up the phone and back to the diaper, and that was it. And you know what? It was the greatest thing, the greatest freaking thing, thinking back. Because if that script had sold for that amount of money, we would have immediately been launched into like, wow, like top. And we weren't ready. We weren't nearly ready. We were green. We had so many more little steps to get up, you know, things to learn, people to meet. I look back now, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like we came up so slowly, little boom, we met this person, this person, this person, and every one of them gave us something. And I feel now, like looking back, that we have a wholesome kind of thing to draw on. We have a lot of experience, a lot of, right there we would have become, you know, swaggering kind of guys. Oh yeah, we know it, we know, yeah, of course, you know, and you sort of lose that, I don't know, it's like not a humility, but it's sort of a, you know, you got to have that. I mean, we don't know a lot of times when we go in what we're really doing. I mean, you have that fear. And actors, I was stunned to hear Jack Nicholson has the same fear when he gets a project. He's like terrified. How am I going to pull this off? I mean, this is Jack Nicholson. But all of them, you all have the same fear. As are you going to be able to pull it off this time? Can you do it? Can you? And that's a kind of a healthy fear to have. It's when you come in swaggering is really dangerous. That's when you start becoming lazy, and when you think you know, you got it figured out is when you need to watch out. But so this script we thought was going to take off. It didn't. Then, you know, now we had tried it on the big stage and it didn't take. Like we didn't get that big deal for it. So now you're talking about an independent movie, and that's really all we wanted to do in the beginning is to make it a small independent movie, not a big studio, you know, big studio fare with all the sort of the baggage that comes with that. So we had some. Managers, obviously at the time, who were taking the script out and trying to put these deals together, and so many times, like we ended up getting an actor. I think we had Christine Slater at one point, and then a financier came in, and then it looked like it was going to take off, and we were like, ah, and then it turns out the financier was a fraud, and then the whole thing fell apart, and Christine Slater went somewhere else, and then we went somewhere, you know, we suddenly had like an actor again and money, and then the money fell apart, or the actor would fall out, and the money, and it just never took, and it went on for years and years, and we sort of got right to that precipice, and then, you know, fell off, and we were starting to get a little, you know, feeling a little snake bit, and then a company, Barbwire, who was starting out, he was, I believe, a real estate magnate in Los Angeles, had started a film company, and they were ramping up and doing a lot of movies, and they got hold of the script and said, yeah, we want to do it. We're going to put up the $6 budget million that the movie needed. And we started talking about some actors, et cetera, and then Travolta got a hold of the script and read it on his treadmill, which I guess is where most scripts get read. But enormously flattering. He said it was one of the greater scripts that he'd read that year or whatever, that month or maybe that day. Which was very flattering, and he like wanted to engage. He was like, "Hey, I want to do this movie. This is a really great script." And so Mark was told, "Hey, show up at Santa Monica Airport. We're going to fly down. We're going to fly down to John's airport. We're going to land in his private airfield there. I guess he lives in a community where there's an airfield. Some people have pools. They have an airfield. So Mark gets down to Santa Monica Airport. He steps on this, Gulfstream or whatever, and he's like, "Cool." He looks down. There's nobody there, and he looks in the cockpit, and there's Barbwire, and he's like, "Where's the flight attendant? Where's the co-pilot?" And he goes, "No, it's just you and me." So he's like, "Oh, okay." So he sits in the co-pilot seat, and 5 minutes later, they blast off and fly down, and they land in John's compound, and a guy walks out of the house with glow sticks, and normal is just. And they park the plane and go inside and wait for John, who's in I think he was in Washington or something at the time, and the guy threw a pair of keys on the table. He's like, "Here," When Mark went in, he obviously I think he was a little nervous, and we hadn't fully formed this like exactly down to the pinpoint of what this movie was going to be and how it was going to look, and I guess he felt a little bit of slackness there, and sort of got cold feet, and he'd also done another project with Yari, which was troublesome in that the financing hadn't arrived on time, and he had to put out some of his own money to finish the movie, so he was already skittish, and in retrospect, it was a good thing, because I don't think the production could have accommodated, John is a huge, entity, is an industry, and this was a small, movie. In the end, we got Guy Pearce, who read the script. He was absolutely phenomenal. And the moment Guy signed on, he met Mark, they hit it off like that, and that was it. The movie was going. And amazingly exciting, because we were drowning in creditors. I mean, Mark and I would be on the phone, and there'd be like 10 creditors. We were both like bankrupt. I mean, there was people just calling every 5 seconds. Mark had cashed all those checks that the credit card gives you. They're like 50% interest or whatever. He'd cashed like 7 of those, and I mean, we were like on destitution's door. And the movie took, boom, that was it. We were going to New Mexico, and it was so amazingly exciting and terrifying. I mean, we'd never really been on a set, all those things. But we were very fortunate to have Guy, and you realize it's a script, and this is, again, I can't stress this enough. If that script, you can offer Guy $1 million, so however much his quote is or was at the time, he does things that he likes doing. He does them out of love. And if the script is good, it's like a giant net. And the better your script is, the stronger that net is, the bigger fish you're going to catch. The only reason we got Guy, the only reason we got the great people that signed on to that movie, and people who could have worked for twice the salary on other movies that were shooting in Albuquerque at the same time, because they read the script and they said, "Shit, we really believe in what you guys are doing. We want to be part of this. We believe this is going to be great." And it was so touching, so amazing. But it came down to that script, and the script changed. When Guy came on, he had his things, and because of the logistics of production, you have to be fluid. You have to be able to change. You can't be like, "I wrote this and it's set in stone." To be closed off like that is very dangerous. You have to be open. You have to realize that things are going to change. You have to realize that other people who stand outside the story, who are looking from 30,000 feet instead of being down in the forest, can see things that you can't see, and you need to entertain or at least be open to that kind of stuff. and I think Guy was just, he was the perfect actor for the movie, and often I think 90% of the time the person that's in a movie that ends up being in the movie, out of all the people you've been through, is the person who's supposed to be in that movie. It's really weird. It just works out. Like James Caan in Misery. I mean, they went through every actor, and but it was James Caan was in the end perfect. He was a guy. And it's interesting. Guy was just a perfect guy for that movie, and such a hard worker. And you meet people like that, where you think it's different. You think sometimes that actors are all blowhards and this, or you think they're a certain way or pampered, you meet somebody who worked. I mean, he worked harder than anybody on that set. He was more motivated. I mean, just brought so much to the production, and it was really it was just a great, great experience. All the people in that movie we are still friends with today. We still keep in touch with. If we did another movie, which I hope we will do soon, those guys will no doubt be a part of it.
What's the name of the movie?
First Snow. First Snow. It's a bit of it's a slow burn. It's a sort of an old style, thriller. But it was, it began with that script. That script, strangely enough, the moment we decided and said we're not going to follow and do what they, what we're supposed to do. What we want to write something that we care about. And that is, I mean, I absolutely believe is why I'm sitting here and not, in New York City, still trying to figure out how to make, a living at this business.
When you had to make some changes, did they allow you as a screenwriter to do that?
Yeah, and you know what? I know that a lot of you, the common story, and maybe you've heard me riff on this before, but there is a perception that the moment a studio or somebody else gets involved in your script, it goes downhill. Not true at all. Our amazing experience with Consequence, the first thing we ever sold, which was to HBO, the script got better. Bob Conti at HBO, phenomenal writer himself, but he was the executive, and he took that script and he made some suggestions. He goes, yeah, okay, this is great, now do this, how about this, and see if you can make this work. How about the guy doesn't die in the end? And you go, that's insane. We went back and we were despondent, and we realized, oh my God, this is a really simple way to do this. This is brilliant. And the script just, whew, like it jumped, like it got so much better.
Was that the script? The guy dying at the end. Okay, that was a
What's that?
Different script.
That was
Yeah, I'm sorry, that was Consequence. Yeah, that was the first thing we ever sold. And so
How's that first script that you...
What's that?
Did that first script that you guys shopped around a lot, did that ever get sold or made into a film? The one where the guy was like, he died in the end and they were like, we can't...
Oh yeah, that's First Snow. That is First Snow, sorry. Yeah, that's the same one. It sort of went, this often happens is when you come out with a script, they try and do it at the top level, they try and sell it to a studio, and then if it fails at that level, then they go, all right, let's go independent. And then you look for people who love it. Usually it's a concept thing up there, and then over here it's a different sort of, it's a different market and a different type of game. But I'm just saying, like, you hear so many stories about things getting destroyed, and sure, they happen, absolutely, but it happens just as much the other way, I think, or at least maybe to a lesser extent, but it could go the other way, where somebody thinks of something you absolutely never imagined, and it's really simple to execute, and it gets that much better. And yeah, that was our experience.
Let's get maybe quick questions from the audience.
Yeah, sorry guys, I've been like blabbering endlessly on, anyway, yeah. Questions?
Maybe talk about the distribution side of things after First Snow, because here you have this great film.
Yeah, so Yari, I have to say, was an amazing company to work for at the time. They made some, Crash was their first movie out of the gate, Best Picture Oscar, boom, right out of the gate. Bob had a tremendous sense of taste, has a tremendous sense of taste. I think they were underfunded, and they had some issues in terms of cash flow and things like that really hampered the company, and eventually I think sort of destroyed a lot of what they were doing. But it was disheartening in that they were such a great team. They just gave us the money and like see you in 28, shoot the movie and see you later, which was great. It was amazing. And but when time came to distribute the picture, it got a bit dicey, and they just never really committed anything to. They didn't do anything interesting. They didn't use, social media wasn't that big at that time. That's only a phenomenon of the past couple of years, but they could have done a lot of things that you would have to do. Like if you made a movie, you would have to be very resourceful. You don't have $50 million to spend papering every whatever and putting it on every TV screen in the country. You got to be really resourceful. You have to figure out, how am I going to sell this movie, and how am I going to make people want to go out and see it? And they made very little effort to do that. And it seemed to us, from where we were standing, that they really dropped the ball on it. They sort of just went, it's nobody's going to whatever. This is what it is, and we're not going to spend any money on it. And they sort of flung it out there. And I think about 12 people saw it. We actually have T-shirts. It could be number 13. 13 is still available.
Next year will be the 5th anniversary of First Snow, and I think we should, now that social media is what it is, we should turn it into
There you go.
the 5th anniversary.
Well, you can't even get the DVD. Like, my sister lives in London. She has never seen this movie. She can't get the DVD. I think we got her one, actually, finally. We got her a pirated Chinese version.
It can't get bought from another company.
What? Sorry?
Another company can't purchase it.
Oh no, once it's done, it's done. That's it.
And so that company has the rights.
Oh yeah, rights. You know, and I think I believe Yari is in bankruptcy because we never got a dime off the royalties or anything like. Well, I think I got a check for 96 cents. I think so far. But you know, you got to be careful, and that's the thing. When you write something that you passionately believe in, you really have to think twice about who you're getting in bed with and what you know, because when there's nothing on the table, it's all easy. Suddenly, when somebody's standing there with some money, then everything gets complicated, and people start wanting more. You know, and that's when stuff hits. I mean, you know, that's when people start changing, and your best buddy goes, you know. But you know, it is, and I will say for independent film, I mean, I feel like so many, you know, people in the independent world want to move up into the feature world, and they sort of try to emulate those things, and everybody's sort of drinking out of the same fountain. It's the same ideas, rehashed. I think if you're going out to make a movie, I mean, really ask yourself, why am I doing this? Who am I making it for? Who's going to watch this movie? Why am I doing it? Like, really do some soul searching, and try and figure out what it is you're really doing. Boil it down to that, you know, that absolute like essence, when there's only that shining bone left in the pot. This is what it's about. I think that's absolutely essential, because I think so many times people have a great, like, an idea, and they sort of go out and they do it, and they you know, put so many resources to it, and then it sort of comes out, and then it has nowhere to go. It's like stuck. But a good movie, a good script, always has somewhere to go. So somebody, if you do something different, this is what they love. When you take something that's familiar and you flip it on its head. You know, you take this is a glass, you turn it upside down, and the wine's still in it. Oh my God, we'll buy it. And it's when you try to emulate and do stuff that's already done, all you're doing is throwing your, you know, it's so hard to get. You know, you got to rise above that stuff and find new things. You got to find, you know, learn the rules and then figure out how to sort of twist them and turn them. And I mean, the most well-worn genre is a great fodder for turning it on its head. You know, a movie like I think the rom-com feels to me anyway so done to death. It's the same, you know, it's just the rom-com, you know, the romantic comedy. It's so done, like it feels so worn. But in those cliches, is a great opportunity to turn things around and do something totally different. The biggest example, of course, is very, very famous example is Indiana Jones, where Harrison comes out and you've got that great swordsman. He's going, you know, and then the convention of those movies, Harrison would always have to fight that guy. You know, have to go on, and then you expect him to go there, and he's got the whip, but he whips out his gun and blows the guy away. That's practical, and suddenly it was like, whoa, you know, he just took that moment and flipped it, and right, and if you can do that, you know, do that as an overall concept, and take the cliche and say, why is it this way? Why does it have to be this way? You know, the meat cute. How do we flip that? You know, how can we do something different with that? That's what we spend a lot of our time doing. Is when we come on to something like, okay, this is Terminator. Can you do something new with Terminator? I mean, it's been done to death. The chase, the robot, you know, how do you flip that on its head? Like, what is this about? How can you know? I mean, that's a lot of what we get paid to do is to you know, take something that's done and find some new spin on it, twist it around, do new things. And I feel that's how you should be thinking, not like, oh yeah, this sold, you know, this is kind of like, yeah, I'm going to do this Godfather scene or I'm going to do this where he comes up behind him and he whacks him in the head with his baseball bat and blood goes flying. And it's like, didn't they do that in like this other movie? You know, don't do that. Find some other way to do it. Find, you know. And I think also, go and look at first films of like Chris Nolan. I mean, there's a guy like who really plays with structure. He does so many amazing things. He's the real deal. And I mean, guy, you know, just talked him up to the end of the earth. But he really does intriguing things. And you know, go look at Following, like his first movie. You know, like you looked at that movie and you knew the guy had. I mean, he shot that on weekends, and you realize. Like, that guy really had something. That movie is riveting. Shot on weekends, black and white, and you could see it. I mean, his talent was, I mean, oozing off the screen. It was called The Following. It's astounding. I mean, but go look at people you admire. Look at their first movies and look at what they did. Did they follow? Did they just make another, you know, this or another that? No, they usually did something very different, and they had their own sort of unique spin on things, which came out of their worldview, their, you know. You guys tired of listening to me yet? Was that with a head shake? Like I saw an eye roll. It's like.
Hawk is available for questions and answers afterwards too.
Yeah, sure. You know, whatever. Again, some of you may have heard all this. I riff on the same thing, but it's really cool to do. It's a great life. I mean, if you really love telling stories and you can't stop doing it, you're stuck with it. So you may as well, not be lazy about it and just, tear into it, learn everything there is to learn and enjoy it.
Well, dinner's being served. I want to thank.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks. Thank you.